I'm here with Kristen. Um, Tell me a little bit about how you got into the cheese business because that's a fascinating story.
Yeah, I always liked cheese. I was interested in it mildly just as a consumer. Um, Growing up, sometimes my mom and I would go to the store and pick out one special cheese and like make a cheese plate at home, but very, very simplistic
Yeah.
and not very fancy, but it seemed fancy to me at the time. Um, and then I was at my last year at U of O. I needed a job. Marketed Choice was hiring for a cheese steward entry level position. I was like, that seems cool. I doubt they'll hire me, but they did. And so it literally was just responding to a job ad. I quickly was working and fell in love with it and thought this is really fun, and realized that you can make a career out of cheese. It is its own industry, and it was at that job that I started dreaming of opening my own cheese shop someday.
I
So
appreciate that.
eventually got there.
So when you started as this, your title was cheese
Cheese steward,
steward.
was the title there. Yeah.
So what is the responsibility of a cheese steward?
Definitely customer service and talking with customers and helping them to make their selections. A lot of product familiarity. That was one thing that was really great about that job, and it was a really great place to start. Was that my department was very education focused. So uh, if it was slow, they put a book in my hand and said, go upstairs and read for an hour. And especially because I was still a student, I responded really well to that. And I just absorbed all this information like a sponge. There's no real cheese school to go to or anything. It is all self-directed learning on the job and reading.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is almost like a male dominated industry to begin with, right?
Um, Cheese making
Yeah.
can definitely be male dominated. Cheese mongering, I don't know,
Okay.
honestly. Business ownership would be
Yeah.
probably male dominated,
100%.
but as far as just actually being a cheesemonger, whether you're self-employed or work for someone else, I don't know the breakdown.
Do you know the history behind that term? Because remember the first time that I came into your place and you gave me your business card and it had cheesemongers, like I need to talk to her because that is just the coolest title ever.
It is the coolest title ever. I really adopt that with pride.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. I sell, I care for, I curate cheese. It's not too terribly unlike being a wine sommelier.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no certification to the extent of sommelier. There is a professional certification for being a cheesemonger.
Okay.
I have not personally sought that out. It'd be a resume builder, and I already own my own shop, so I don't need
That's
it.
what I was going to say. I don't think you need it at this point.
No,
Yeah.
not at the moment.
And you've been at this for what, 20, almost 20 years now?
In September, it'll be 17 years.
17 years, all in cheese. That's amazing.
Well, I mean, there were some short forays into wine and restaurant work, but I was still working with cheese in whatever capacity.
Yeah.
Or it being just like at least a really strong hobby. And that was for pretty short blips overall.
Okay.
But continually in cheese for, what, 13 years now?
Yeah.
Without,
That's awesome.
Without much of a break.
So what goes into procuring the cheese? Because like a lot of people don't understand that there is a lot involved. And I mean a lot involved.
It's just a lot of product knowledge. I do not directly import anything. That is definitely its own thing. That I order from distributors that either direct import themselves or they're getting it from an importer.
Okay.
And so it's passing through many hands to get to this shop and then thusly on someone's table.
Yeah.
But at this point, I work with a very small handful of distributors that I've worked with for years and years. Some of them, two in particular, from the beginning of my cheese career. I'm very, very familiar with what they have and what is available on the market. So, like if someone asks me, and this happens all the time, or someone traveled somewhere and they'll come in and a big example is people who've traveled to Scandinavia.
Okay.
Come in and they're like, I had this amazing cheese. And I'm like, okay, well, I know unequivocally, at least in the Pacific Northwest, if not the United States, that cheese is not imported.
Okay.
You have to have a plane ticket to get that cheese. I'm sorry.
That's amazing.
It's flat out not available. I'm like, can you check? I'm like, I don't need to check. I know that it's not available. I'm sorry. So it's been very educational in just learning how product and specifically food moves throughout the world to get into our bellies. And there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of logistics at play.
And a lot of people are under the assumption that you know, once you own a business, that's easy street. No. That's not the case.
Absolutely not.
No. Like the amount of work involved and the amount of risk that you've taken just to start a place like this is huge.
Yes.
And I want to talk a little bit about how you got started into this place, because it's a really cute place. I like what you've done upstairs.
Thank you.
It's really cute. Did you like this place just kind of speak to you one day, or?
I was specifically looking at Newburgh. I wanted proximity to wine country, so I could have partnerships with wineries, which is a big part of my business. In talking about the way that food moves through the world, this area, and really mostly outside of the Portland metropolitan area, or closer in than Newburgh. Out here is kind of a cheese desert, if you will.
Yeah.
There's Fred Meyer.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's it. And they do have a decent selection, but it is limited by their corporate buyers on what they're allowed to bring in. I can bring in whatever I want. Within reason, obviously, if it's available. But that was kind of another thing, is bringing cheese to a corner where it's not as easily accessible. I thought for a minute about McMinnville, and I thought McMinnville would be really cool, but I live in Tigard, and that is just flat out a commute that does not work for my life. So I'm not going to start a business where off the bat it's untenable.
Yeah, 100%.
So now I'm 25 minutes away from my shop, and that works.
And I think it's an important distinction too, right? And there's something that I talk about a lot on this podcast, is the huge difference between the local guys and the big chain stores like Fred Meyer, right?
Huge difference.
You're not going to get any cheese from a really tiny local company in a Fred Meyer.
You are sometimes. I was literally discussing this with a customer yesterday.
Yeah.
That, again, cheese is not unlike a lot of other industries that deals are made.
Yeah.
And so there are a couple, or one in particular, very small local cheesemaker that almost all, if not basically all, of her product is going to Fred Meyer's.
Okay.
And I think I get it. It's a paycheck. And I understand why financially that decision probably had to be made. You got to do what's right for you and your business.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of rules that she then has to follow. It's pretty stringent. And then it doesn't leave much left over for places that really should have access to that product, like myself.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate, but it's just business.
Yeah.
It touches everything at the end of the day. And it's hard because these cheeses are wonderful, some of the best made in the state.
Yeah.
And they're almost immediately put on clearance as soon as they hit the shelves in Fred Meyer, because of varying reasons. Maybe that location doesn't have strong enough staff to help sell it and actually move the product, and so they have to put it on clearance to have any hope to get it. I don't understand the point of bringing something in and then immediately selling it at cost. Like you're in the negative at that point.
Yeah.
But
and I think like if flipping it on the other side too, right? So if I'm looking for a really amazing cheese, I don't think I'm going to go to Fred Meyer and check it out. Like that's not even on my top 20 list of places to go for cheese.
I mean, if that's what you have access to, then go for it. No hate there.
Right.
Um,
At the same time, though, like the stuff that you get, you're not going to find at Fred Meyer.
that is purposeful.
Yes.
I have access to most of what is carried at Fred Meyer, not that one particular cheesemaker that I was referring to, unfortunately, but the vast majority of what they have, I have access to. But because I know people can get it at Fred Meyer, I choose not to carry it, so I'm bringing other options. I'm also ordering from a local distributor too, so my small business is also assisting another small business. Yes, but I order a lot from them, and they don't service Fred Meyer, so
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so like there, and it seems to me that there is a sense of community, especially in places like Newburgh, where small businesses tend to sort of get together and sort of support each other.
Yeah, I mean, that has definitely been the case since I started here. I wasn't anticipating that, maybe just working in Portland for years. But I also opened during COVID, so I think that there was a little extra sentiment of that at the time. But I was definitely very welcomed into the community, which was really wonderful.
So take us through a typical day here. So when you walk in the store, you have this amazing layout where you can choose between like, the different cheeses, but you also have wines, and you also have Tell us a little bit more about your store as you walk in that door.
We're half retail and half dine-in. So we have regulars that only dine in, and we have regulars that only do retail shopping. So there's kind of all things to all people in that regard. We've got a cut-to-order cheese case, cut-to-order charcuterie that we use an old Italian hand-cranked slicer.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's kind of a beautiful showpiece right when you walk in. And lots of other kind of specialty foods, with cheese really being the central theme. So obviously we go down this specialty food rabbit hole. You can go in a lot of different directions. And I'm really trying to maintain focus of things that would be accompaniments to cheese or adjacent to the experience of eating good cheese.
And I the difference is you could tell, right? So what I mean by that is, before I was married, I didn't understand the difference between Tillamook cheese and other kinds of cheese, right? I didn't know until I was introduced to like regular, like real specific made to order. It's different. And it's just even the taste, the flavor profiles, it's just different.
And that's no hate on Tillamook either. Guess what's in my fridge at home 100% of the time? Tillamook medium cheddar. I'm still an Oregon girl. And we use Tillamook here in some of our recipes. So if it tastes good, eat it. And I just want to give people more opportunities and more access to things that taste good that maybe they haven't encountered before.
So what's the farthest away that you've sourced your cheese from?
Directly or from a distributor?
From a distributor.
From a distributor. Geographically, the furthest away would probably be, I guess, Italy.
That's awesome.
Being that France and Spain are closer.
Right.
There's really, or actually Greece.
Okay.
Greece was further east. There's really not very much out of Eastern Europe that is making its way over here. Very little. There are some places that will directly import, but those aren't. I don't have access to because I'm not going to deal with that red tape.
And I'm assuming the red tape means like the getting it overseas and all of the. Yeah, I would imagine that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to stop, and sometimes New York Harbor and get checked in.
Yeah.
And sometimes things sit in shipping containers for a while, and to get something over here, it's got to go through a lot of customs and checks, and there's a lot of shipping logistics and costs, and so no.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna let someone else deal with that. That's not the fun part of selling cheese.
Yeah.
So I'll just place an order from somewhere that's doing all of that.
And then you talked about like when you come in with the show with the slicer. Where did you get the slicer?
It came with the place.
Oh, really?
It did. Yes, there was a business that was here before.
Yeah.
It was a restaurant that had that slicer, and I, in taking over the place, did a sublease before signing my own lease, and paid for all of the furniture, fixtures, and equipment that came with it. Just part of the deal.
Yeah.
And so that was part of the furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then like so when you come in and stairs, you go there to the first part, and then you got the dining area in the back.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a full bar.
Correct.
Which is awesome because you don't normally think of full bar and restaurant with cheese. You kind of think of it's just wine. No, that's not here. You got some pretty cool signature cocktails up there too.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with the cocktails, and kind of have a reputation of having good cocktails, which is it's very rewarding.
That's awesome. And then what's next for this place?
Oh, I have lots of things cooking.
Yeah.
Right now. Metaphorically, not literally.
I appreciate the pun.
I didn't mean to, and then I realized I said that. I'm like, oh, okay. Let me clarify here. Definitely building catering is a big thing on my agenda. There's a lot of demand for that, and I think there kind of always will be to a certain extent. So I want to move in that direction. There's a lot of, especially like Instagram-centric, they call themselves charcuterie businesses. Charcuterie means meat, so the word has been kind of bastardized. But the product they're using isn't of the highest quality. A lot of the time, there are definitely exceptions.
Right.
So while some of the things they make are absolutely beautiful, no doubt about that, my focus is always going to be on product quality, showcasing smaller makers and artisanal products that aren't made in mass. Food with a story behind it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to Costco or Trader Joe's and then building a platter and charging $400 for it. These are all like really small made things and that's also another part of my business that I'm kind of in line with the catering, whether it's going to straight to a customer's table or I'm working with winery partners.
Yeah.
Kind of my pitch to winery partners is let the quality of the product and the story of the product reflect what you're trying to tell with your wine.
I appreciate that so much. And the difference between local and the national people is when you come here, you know that the cheese has been vetted. Mm-hmm. You know you've been you do a lot of quality assurance, quality control on everything that comes out of your place.
Yep.
How do you go through the process of selecting which cheese you bring in?
A lot of that comes down to my own experience in just years. It's kind of a balance of different types. Like there's only so many blue cheeses you can have.
Okay.
Like generally, if someone's getting a blue cheese, if they like it, which is still a big if, they're usually only getting one. So there's only so many that you can have.
Okay.
Because they're just flat out not going to get ordered as much. Then you kind of have the balance of perishability. People like soft cheeses, but they go bad more quickly.
Okay.
So there's that balance of, or having a sturdier cheese that is already aged 2 years and it's going to be fine for a while. Then I organize my case always geographically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of filling in holes. I'm like, hey, we're a little light on Spanish cheese right now. I need to bring in some other Spanish things. I have some representation there. Different types of cheese. I discussed it with my employee this morning. The regular plain chev that I was carrying is no longer available, and so I had to bring another because you have to have a plain chev at a cheese shop, I believe.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different kind of considerations and moving parts to it. It's also what people respond to that I've seen over the years. I'm still learning kind of, and I will always be learning what my specific customer base here at Good Company goes for and wants, because I've spent years in grocery, and that's a different customer base. People are buying more cooking cheeses when they're at a grocery store.
Gotcha.
And less so in a cheese shop. Not zero,
but more.
But I mean, I worked at Zupan's on Burnside for 4 years, and it's a busy store and has a great cheese section. But I was going through a 80-pound wheel of Parmigiano Reggiano once a week and maybe twice a week during the holidays. And here it takes me like a year to go through that much parm. So luckily I can get smaller pieces.
Yeah. What's your biggest seller?
My biggest selling cheese, it's really spread out.
Okay.
That's hard to say. I sell a fair amount of like Comté and Gruyere, but that's also partially because they're favorites of mine and my staff, so it's easy to sell.
Gotcha. Okay.
I sell a fair amount of Briar Rose cheese because the creamery is like 10 minutes from the shop. So, that's the hyper local thing. People come here asking for it by name.
And what's the name of it again?
Briar Rose Creamery.
Briar Rose Creamery. 10 minutes away.
Yep, it's
local.
in Dundee.
That's awesome.
Yep. So I sell a fair amount of that. But I have a large selection, so that really kind of spreads things out. And then if I were to like run a sales report, some of the numbers would be skewed because there's certain cheeses that I sell in large quantities to wineries.
Okay.
They'll have an order of like once a week, can I get 4 pounds of Manchego or something? So then it's almost like artificial numbers for that particular cheese because it's being purchased in such large quantities on a regular basis from a winery.
Is there a science behind pairing different cheeses with different sort of wines or alcohols or drinks?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably a science. But
so
I haven't delved into that because taste is so subjective.
That makes sense.
So, and honestly, beyond just taste being subjective to that person, there's even within that one person so many different variables, like the pH in your mouth at the moment that you're having this thing. Do you still have toothpaste in your mouth? Or, what have you?
Yeah.
So
the cheese is going to taste different if you had a latte versus something else.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
There are some kind of, basic guidelines you can go by. Like you want a wine with more acidity if the cheese is really rich and creamy because it helps break it up on the palate. Things like that.
Okay.
But I just really encourage people to try things out, and if they like it, then that's the whole goal, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've always had this fascination with how you go about choosing what kind of cheese to use in what recipe. And so you have your favorites. You were talking a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. And do you use those mostly in your restaurant recipes as well?
It depends on the recipe.
Okay.
We make 3 different cheese spreads here in house. They're my own recipes. It's a pimento cheese, a pub cheese, and a cervelle de canoe, which is basically a garlic or cream cheese. Mm-hmm. But I use, and I will accept no substitutes.
Yeah.
Gina Marie cream cheese.
Okay.
For all of them.
Yeah.
using any other cream cheese is not the same.
Interesting.
It's just the best cream cheese. It's all natural with no gum stabilizers or fillers, so it's a completely different texture than like Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It's life-changing cream cheese.
Yeah, I've been off. I won't get into the Philadelphia. They've got some questionable ingredients in there sometimes.
That one is, definitely a favorite for using. And then I use Tillamook Sharp.
Yeah.
For the pub and the pimento. Gives a flavor profile that I want. Color.
That's awesome.
Price. I think there's a lot of different considerations.
And then in terms of like the cheeses here, if somebody wants to like sample before they buy like a large thing, that's something that's, and you're not getting that at Fred Meyer.
Yeah, well, they should.
Yeah, they should, but you're not.
Yeah, yes, someone can definitely have a sample.
And so like, and then you're talking about how you ship to like places like other restaurants and wineries. Like, how did you get started doing that?
That was always part of the plan.
Yeah.
In starting the business. So that one really kind of, to a certain extent, was a if you build it, they will come sort of thing. Word got out that there was a cheese shop. It says it on my website. Like, if you're a winery and you want cheese, just get in touch with me. So I built a lot of partnerships with that. People will just come to me. I don't really like hit the streets and market it. I'm just receptive. My whole goal is to help these businesses, help these tasting rooms, provide something nice for their guests and relieve the stress. That they don't have to worry about making things or procuring things or pairing things. My whole goal is to make things easy because they got a lot going on. We all do.
Yeah.
So
and
all of my winery partners, they're all very different, and it's all catered to what works for them, and I'm happy to do it.
And that's the difference right there, right? Mm-hmm. When you talk to you about all of the things you're doing, your comment is, I want to do what's best for them.
Yeah.
It's not how much money I can make for myself.
I mean, ideally it's both.
Right. But what I'm saying, though, is that's a different mindset that you're not going to get from the large folks out there.
Yeah.
Right? Like the small, independently owned and operated stores is where you're going to get the best customer service.
Yeah.
You're going to get the best response, and you're going to get the best experience.
The stupid interview question of what is your biggest weakness?
Yeah.
The answer is
I hate that.
And the answer that you're supposed to say, quote unquote, is I care too much.
Yeah.
Well, I do. I actually do care too much. So I built my own business where I can care too much.
Yeah.
So I've created an environment where that mindset is encouraged and fostered.
And one of the things that you said that I wanted to touch base on is like no food without a story. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that.
I think that food is, I don't know, obviously one could argue better for our earth, better for the economy, everything when it's made on a smaller level or, not moving as far or just higher quality. But when food has a story and is made by hand with loving care, I feel like there's an intangible nourishment that brings to your body, kind of like how grandma's cooking hits like nothing else. Yeah. It's really along those lines. And also eating food that makes you happy.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. I've obviously heard a lot over the years, people like, oh, I can't have too much cheese, it's bad for you. I'm like, I would argue the opposite.
It's sugar, folks. I'm sorry.
I can write a master's thesis on this, okay?
Cheese just makes everything better.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It has, obviously, nutritive value. Mm-hmm. But then, part of the story is also, like, there are cheeses that helped maintain a specific breed or species of sheep in Spain or something like that, saving it from extinction. Or
That's awesome.
You know, there's things like that. Or like Osso Arati has been made in the Basque region of France for 4,000 years.
Yeah.
Parmigiano Reggiano has had the same recipe for almost 1,000 years. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Um,
there's some semblance of history.
Yeah.
And tradition.
Yeah, and that's something that obviously isn't a big part of our culture as Americans.
Yeah.
And it's taken for granted in places with culture and history.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to get just a small bit of that, a small slice, if you will. And
Yeah. I like that though. And so, like, when you started this place and you opened up your first door,
Mm-hmm.
like what was that like? That first opening day?
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was on I think day 3 or 4 of a constant panic attack.
Okay.
I had some emergency acupuncture. I couldn't keep food down. I was absolutely terrified. Full disclosure, it was not the best day of my life. It was terrifying.
The first episode of my podcast will never air for that particular reason.
Yeah.
I had to re-record it because I was a wreck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I've never experienced anything like that. The closest thing would be having a baby.
Yeah.
A lot less physically painful
than
having a baby, but my son was already born by the time I opened my shop. So then having had that, constant panic attack and feeling nauseous. I'd never experienced that before, but then I realized maybe I was kind of having a panic attack while I was in labor too.
Yeah, that's fair.
Super not fun. So it felt like a culmination of a lot of pressure and years of work and want, and it was just a lot. It's very, very overwhelming.
Yeah.
But settled into it fairly quickly, I guess. In retrospect, maybe a week or 2 in, started really kind of hitting a groove.
Yeah.
That all being said, I mean, maybe that's even overstating it. It wasn't a week or 2. Because it was September 1st of 2020 that we opened. And if you remember September of 2020, there were a lot of fires going on. So the fires were week 2 of business.
Wow. Oh, man.
And, there were people on varying levels of evacuation warnings. One of my employees was in the be ready thing. So I was like,
scary.
don't come into work, stay home so you're ready in case whatever. She was fine. But one of the days it was super slow, so I just told all my employees stay home and I'm just gonna be here and whatever.
Yeah.
And it was completely fine because it was really dead. And then the next day it was very much not dead. And I was by myself and it sucked. And we're still, I'm still figuring things out. And it was brand new. And I got it handed to me. And my parents were here eating it. And they had to help me bus and do dishes because they just felt so bad for me. It was awful.
That's actually kind of sweet though.
Yeah. Maybe to someone else it was not a good day.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Just being pulled in a bunch of different directions and it not being like clockwork. I don't have muscle memory into making everything yet, so I'm still winging it. But, all the customers were totally cool. So there's at least that part of it. No one was razzing me or anything. Yeah. It was just a lot of pressure. So once we got to the quote unquote normal, things started kind of moving along. Then we had the dining freeze.
Yep.
And I had to lay off one employee and then partially lay off the other 2.
Bummer.
But we got through it.
Yeah.
People were like, how did you move through that? I said, we didn't know any different. The whole thing was rolling with the punches, which you have to do anyways when you open a brand new business, is figuring things out as you go along. We just had an extra set of challenges, but we didn't know any different.
And at the end, it's going to make you stronger, I think.
Sure.
I really do believe that, right? I do believe that when life throws you those challenging moments and you get through it, it builds character and it builds something inside of you that helps you get through the next time a little bit easier.
Well, I also don't have that comparison that a lot of people that had businesses pre-COVID had.
Yeah.
Like there was no before times for me.
Okay.
It just always was what it was. So
And
I think it's a perspective.
And are things kind of getting back to? And I hate to say back to before, because like we're just saying you don't know that's the normal, but
I think that to a certain extent things never will be.
I agree with that 100%.
There was more of a rush, kind of maybe like 2021, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And then things have kind of slowed down in the valley overall. Like, I mean, talking to other business owners, a lot of winery people I talk to all the time, and there's so many different factors. COVID obviously is its own thing. We're in an election year, and historically that slows things down. Obviously, life is expensive, so that slows things down. Alcohol consumption is down overall, so that's affecting the wine industry. Just I don't know about globally, but at least for the whole of the United States.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Oh yeah, alcohol consumption is down. I think people really consumed a lot when they were at home. 2020 was actually a pretty big boon for wineries.
Okay.
Their sales were way up. So much so that they know that they're artificial sales numbers.
Okay.
And so they're like, I have to remember not to compare it to that year. That was a complete anomaly. So it still is a certain amount of, it is what it is, and rolling with the punches and just, tweaking and adjusting as you go.
I appreciate that.
The whole thing is about flexibility to a certain extent. Knowing where your boundaries are, for sure, but flexibility.
So when you're saying knowing where your boundaries are, what do you mean by that?
There's certain things that I will never do.
As a matter of like personal principle, that just things that just.
I mean, that's a really generalized statement for a wide spectrum of things.
I get that.
I have kind of certain business principles that I really try to adhere to, and one is not deviating from the central point of everything, the central theme of everything, which is cheese.
Yeah.
So, like, people ask pretty often for coffee service. I will never have coffee. I do not have hot beverages at all.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Not a coffee shop, a cheese shop. And coffee service is a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
A completely different animal altogether.
Yeah, no thank you. Not interested.
I don't blame you at all.
Nope.
A different kind of clientele, a different kind of everything.
I'm not trying to be a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And just like having coffee like available.
Yeah.
I've worked in a restaurant that was way busier than mine, and I've had to pour out a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
Because you can't let it, you don't just like brew it once at the beginning of the day. You have to continually brew it and pour it out.
Yeah.
And
there's always that expectation it's going to be a fresh, hot cup of coffee, even though you only had like one person order it in a 24-hour window.
Yep, and then how much decaf I've had to dump
out
too.
Yeah. Wow.
And then how many different kinds of milk do you have to have now? How many kinds of different sugar?
Yeah.
I don't even have space for all of the mugs. It's a hard pass.
Yeah.
So that's a boundary.
Yeah.
No, I will not do that. But
mad respect for that too. Like I know I met a few people that went down that path and it ended up biting them in the rear end.
Yeah. And like I picked up little things along the way. A lot of when I have my own place, I will not do that.
Yeah.
And when I talk about not deviating from the theme, The example I use is I used to work at a French restaurant that a year or two down the line, they started doing a Taco Tuesday happy hour thing.
At a French restaurant?
Yes.
What?
Yes. Like, no.
Wow.
You're confusing your customers.
Yeah.
And it's not like they weren't good tacos. They were, but they weren't even like a French riff on tacos, which I don't even know what that would be. But
I couldn't even imagine.
no, it was a regular taco.
Wow.
And no. So
yeah. No.
You know, I get a lot of you shoulds.
Yeah.
It's constant. And sometimes there are some good suggestions in there.
Yeah.
That's pretty rare. Most of the time it's people just spouting you shoulds, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I understand what my business is all about, and you may think that you do.
Yeah. And one of the things I talk about a lot is avoiding that altogether. Like, when people come up and tell you should, so as somebody who's on the autism spectrum, I hear that all the time. You should do this, you should do this, you should. Like, that doesn't help anybody.
No.
Like, I understand suggestions like, you know, like, hey, I have this idea, I'm going to throw it by you, which is a totally different ballgame than you trying to tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you made the commitment, this is your business, this is your shop, this is your pride and joy. People should just let you do what you do and enjoy the fruits of your labor.
I understand that it's coming from a place of helpfulness.
Yes.
They're trying to be helpful. Like,
yes.
I have an idea for you. But one of my main business mottos that I keep coming back to is just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
I changed my menu after the first day.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I came away, that's another thing about talking about what was the first day like.
Yeah.
I came away from that first day. I went home absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
And told my husband, now I know what doesn't work. And he's like, it's your place.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. You can change the menu. It doesn't matter. And I was like, you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
Because I had made the menu, but I hadn't put it into action in the middle of a service yet. So once I did put it into the middle of a service, I was like, oh, yeah, no, that doesn't work. There was a salad on the menu the first day, but then I got the produce order.
Yeah.
And I saw how much refrigeration space it took up that I did not have.
Oh,
how much I had
yeah.
to order just to make the minimum. And, you know, like lettuce goes bad quickly.
Quick.
So,
real quick.
So, like, I was like, oh, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
Salad off the menu.
Yeah.
And so people are like, why don't you have a salad? It's like, well, let me regale you with why. Trust me, I don't just like not have a salad because I'm trying to be mean to vegetarians. Like, no, it doesn't work for my business.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, people brought up different things. Why don't you have this? Why don't you have this? And it's like, because I want no raw meat coming through here. My health inspector loves that about me. Like, there's so many different things.
And it's so many things you don't even think about. Like, who thinks about, like, the ramifications of having raw meat? I would have never thought that.
It's just, it's an added level of food safety and sanitation that you have to deal with. And I don't want to deal with it. I already have tried to keep things very clean and sanitized as it is. I don't need an added element to make it all harder.
Yeah.
For what? I don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other aspect I want to acknowledge too, because it's rare, when you walk into a place like this, everybody has a smile on their face, right?
Oh.
All of the employees, and I mean that, like, it's rare for this day and age to walk into a place and all of the employees are smiling and happy and wanting to be there. And that says something, because obviously you have a commitment to your employees that a lot of places don't really have.
No, I mean, not only are we a really small crew, it's just, you know, right now myself, 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to work as a team. There is no other option at all. And I also came into this with really wanting to build a good place to work that is fair to employees, with a lot of benefits.
It shows.
I self-sacrifice a lot to provide those benefits.
Yeah.
Like, I provide more paid vacation than I've ever received at any time in my career. So I'm paying someone to not be there and for me to personally cover their shift at the expense of my family.
Yeah.
So you're welcome.
Yeah.
Like,
but you do it without a second thought.
Oh, there's second thoughts, but
That's fair.
It's the policy that I set in place.
Yeah.
Don't think that I'm not like mad at myself for it in the moment. This sucks. But I that's what I wanted to provide my employees. I mean, like, it's kind of hidden on the fridge right here. I wrote out my mission and guiding principles for the business, which I recommend anybody running a business do to really sit down and kind of game plan out what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. And it's meant to be kind of a free-flowing work that gets amended and edited over time as things change.
Mm-hmm.
I really haven't changed it because I've read back through it regularly. And I'm like, no, I'm still holding true to what I really set out to do here. And everybody on the first day of work gets a copy of that, so they're knowing like this is what we're all about.
That's awesome.
Along with what I have been told is like the most thorough employee handbook ever. But and I'm not gonna lie, it was highly plagiarized from larger places that I worked before. I kept them and I took bits and pieces and made it my own. But I tell my employees, like, just because we're a small crew doesn't mean it's any less your livelihood or my livelihood, and I take that seriously.
Yeah.
We're not all loosey-goosey with the employment stuff here just because we're small.
Yeah.
Like, no, we don't have HR. But, it's still following everything.
Yep.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, like I told them, like, you're required to take a lunch by law.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, I need to talk to some past jobs I've had. I'm like, oh, I know, but I'm not playing that game. Like, you're taking a lunch, you legally have to.
And I can't stress enough how awesome that is to hear from a business owner.
Well, I mean, the whole idea is that if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of you.
And that, it goes a long way, right? So I'm blessed in that for my day job, I can be authentically autistic at work.
Yeah.
It's a very unique experience. I've never had it before, and that's why I stay.
Yeah.
Because it means everything. If you're allowed to be yourself and have some ownership and take some pride and get acknowledged, it means the world. Just that little bit.
Yeah. It's huge. Now, giving people a great place to work doesn't necessarily mean you're guaranteed hard work and loyalty and all those things.
Yeah.
But if you don't provide that, you're guaranteed to not get it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good distinction.
So
I think it's a really good distinction.
As an employer, I'm trying to put my best foot forward.
Yeah.
I would hope that would be reciprocated. That's the whole idea.
Yeah. And then supporting people as they advance. So, like, if somebody at your company would be like, I want to advance and become a cheesemonger.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, they are cheesemongers, technically.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is their job title.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's absolutely awesome. Well, we've been at this for about an hour.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to, before we wrap this up?
I don't know. I think that really covers a lot of the main points.
I think so too.
Owning a business is hard. It can be really rewarding. Working with product that I love is the biggest reward, and I need to. I make a conscious effort to try to recenter myself on my love for cheese.
Yeah, it shows.
I try.
It shows. How do people get a hold of you? If they want cheese, they got to come to Newburgh.
Yep. Come to Newburgh. I'm highly available by email. And
what's your website?
GoodCompanyCheese.com.
GoodCompanyCheese.com. Check this place out. You all need to come here. You do. It's something. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Yeah, thank you.